Having paid many silver to get into Xertus for the benefit of my newfound so-called friends, I soon learned the reason for the steep price. I hear laughter from the guards behind me, and multiple voices shout out, "Thank you." I look back to see a wagon being let in, with ill-dressed people hanging from the sides. In the front of the wagon, near the driver, was a vision that caught my eye. A lady dressed as a gypsy. Though young, she seemed set on getting something done. Well, so long as it didn't interfere with my plans, there was no need to linger on it. Chelsandra had spoke of a shrine to the hag, and that the item she needed to have returned would be there. I looked around and saw nothing so malevolent as a shrine to an ill-intentioned being. This seemed to be a well-kept place, or as well as could be. The people seemed simple, to choose a polite term. Yet there was a church. A star with an eagle engraved into it adorned the roof of the church. Given my history, knowing religion was important. Again, I could only see dark clouds in my mind, sealing away any knowledge of their worship. I turned back to the town's main path to see before me the orc that had conned me of the entrance fee, and with him a man that was making no secret that his profession was magic, dressed in long robes, with white hair flowing from under his hood. This starkly contrasted with my simple shirt and breeches, covered with a faded black long coat. The orc called him Magix, though I'm sure that's not his real name and something the orc made up on the spot. They exchanged coins. The wizard Magix asked him for 1 gold, and the orc handed him 2. The wizard did not correct him. So, not only was I swindled, I was swindled by an orc that can't count. I'm slipping badly, and I badly need a drink. Just past them was a single-story building with a plaque reading, "Dirk's Dirty Dive," and it sat right next to a brothel. Somehow, I felt like this was fitting. As much as I'm sure that this Dirk is as classless as the name implies, a few drinks while waiting for sundown wasn't a bad idea. I stepped through the doors and looked around. A few souls lingered by the corner tables, but there was still plenty of room at the bar, at which I could see a tall, muscular orc barmaid absently wiping at the counter. There were women moving about taking orders, and some even dancing on tables. There was also a gentleman there, but he seemed to be more interested in just keeping an eye on things. In the far back, a lone man sat playing a lute to give music for the dancing ladies. Then, a little further back was an almost hidden, very strange sight. A pile of metal in the shape of a man. As I looked closer, it seemed like some kind of odd suit of armor. I couldn't quite place it, but something didn't seem right about it. But best not to dwell on it. I've got a job to do. I moved to a corner close to the door, but away from the sunlight. If asked, I will order a drink to keep up the appearances. For the time being, I needed to look for a beautiful woman, one of which was dancing on a pole near the back. I admit, my eyes may have lingered longer than appropriate. What can I say? I am still yet just a man. Then, in the back of my mind, I hear a very judgmental hum. I whipped my head around to see if anyone was around me before realizing that this admonishment had come from my very own mind. Chelsandra's voice again infiltrated my head. "I thought you were turning over a new leaf." As the orc lady was walking toward me, I decided not to answer. Her clothes were clean and she wasn't bad to look at. I could see why this place had so many customers in the middle of the day. I asked for a beer, something blonde if they had it. With that, she looked into my eyes, and I couldn't place it, but something felt very familiar about her. So I just asked, "Have we met before?" She only gruffly replied, "Do you think you're the first guy to try that line with me?" Right. In another life, perhaps. Before she could leave, I felt something pounce onto the seat beside me. Both of us looked to see a blonde tabaxi sitting there. I suppose this is my own fault. I did order a blonde. Fate is just full of humor today. It was the same tabaxi that had swindled me along with the orc out for the entrance fee, only now out of his garish green armor. He ordered a drink as well, and then asked about food. She listed out several different fish on the menu. Seems they are all fresh as we're not far from the ocean, which means I may not be far from where I was cast overboard. The cat continued to hum to himself, trying to make up his mind. "Come on, meow. The lady doesn't have all night." With that, he shot me an unamused glance and then made his decision. I said I would take the same. "And my friend is buying my drink." He smirked and remarked, "That's fair." The barmaid introduced herself as Lilith and said our food would be out shortly before moving on to the next table. My new friend reached out his hand and introduced himself as Seiji Date. In return, I shook his hand and introduced myself as Jude. Only I didn't. When I moved my lips, my full name came out. I said Judas Lightforge. I could feel myself flush with panic. I was thrown off a ship by people who know my name. I just escaped death from an insidious judge that knew my name. There is a hag here that knows my name. Why on earth would I give my real name? Then I hear a whisper in my head again. "You shouldn't lie to people, Judas. This woman is going to get me killed." Fortune smiled for a moment as Seiji had no reaction to my name. Our drinks arrived and he continued on speaking about his journey and that he was related to some royalty. My first thought was that he was full of it, but his mannerisms supported at least being raised well. His posture, choice of words, even the way he articulated with his hands, or would he call them paws? I don't believe him, but he's buying my drinks and a friend in this place might be useful. The story continued about an island kingdom and its culture. If he made all this up, he had put a lot of time into it. I lost track of how many steins I had finished during his tale. He paused for a moment, and then spoke in a lower voice, asking me if I was a practitioner in magic, to which I responded I am not a practitioner. I do not require practice. I would say I'm a petty dabbler in powers beyond this world. His shoulders dropped as he said that he's not currently in his real body. Shit's about to get real weird, isn't it? I said, feeling my eyebrow cock on its own. His eyes did not lose their serious demeanor. "I am from the kingdom of Lunax. It is a human kingdom. I am a human. I need to find a way back to my true form." Looking at him, I could tell he was serious, and I wasn't sure how to tell him that I don't care. The bar door opened, with Magix and the orc walking in. After no less than 2 steps, the orc locked eyes with Seiji and screamed, "Kitty! Want to pet Kitty, friend?" He charged at us, quite literally like an unwitting child charging into a not-so-friendly cat. I quickly ran from the table and up to the bar, not even looking at the mess behind me. I don't know, and I don't care. That is way too much noise and attention for my taste. I'm sure my friend Seiji can sort all that out. Thankfully, there was a seat waiting for me at the bar, and a drink was dropped off seconds later. With beer in hand, I turned to watch the show. A tabaxi fighting an orc. I've never seen that. At least I don't think I have. Unfortunately, magics have managed to get between them and get the orc to back up. The wizard called the orc Griswold. And Griswold was big. Thick muscles kind of big. Seiji was standing ready to defend himself, and it seemed like Griswold was genuinely sorry for upsetting our young royal friend. I buy kitty milk? Yes, Griswold, I'm sure that will calm everything right down. I huffed to myself. Apparently I said this loud enough for a young lady beside me to hear it. She was giggling to herself. I was a bit surprised as no one was sitting beside me a second ago. I didn't even see her come in. I glanced at her and realized that she was the lady from the wagon earlier, the gypsy. She introduced herself as V. I took another look and her clothes were loose and flowing, just enough to hide several daggers. I felt certain she had more than I had managed to see. I only gave a small grunt of acknowledgement. She began telling me of her journey and I checked out. Do I have the kind of face that says I want to hear all about people's lives? What did catch my attention is that she asked for a drink, and specifically asked for the strongest that they have. Lilith said the strongest they have is their Dragon's Blood Ale, and it's authentic. V said that she would be the judge of that and ordered 2 of them. Lilith placed down 2 mugs of ale and brought out a bottle of dark, thick fluid. It moved like blood. The barmaid poured unmeasured amounts into each mug. Before she lifted the bottle, V reached out and swiped her finger over the lid of the bottle. The blood clung to her finger as she lifted it to her mouth. I watched Lilith to see her eyebrow raise in surprise. Seems like this stuff is very strong. V smiled almost maliciously, saying that this was definitely the real stuff. She then pushed the second mug at me and informed me that it was thanks for paying for the wagon. I'm sure that there is some lesson here about good deeds being rewarded, but I would soon learn there is no such reward. I took a drink and it burned all the way down. The room grew darker, and I could have swore Lilith's breast grew bigger. It hit me immediately. I didn't even notice that the food had come out. I heard Seiji call out, "Oh hey, our food is out and it's been set by Judas Lightforge." Yeah, the dumb cat had said my full name out loud to everyone. Griswold charged at us. I prepared to dive out of the way, but V only watched him run at us with an amused smile. He managed to stop just before bowling us over. "You got chicky nuggies?" Griswold asked. Lilith's muscular green arm easily lifted a plate of what looked like meat covered in bread. As she held them out, I took another drink of the Dragon's Blood Ale and could literally see her breasts growing again. I put down my drink, and Lilith leaned forward to meet my gaze and let me know I had been caught. Luckily, she only laughed at me and went on pouring drinks. Griswold picked up the so-called chicken nuggies, one in each hand, and then made them fight. After a moment, he ate the apparent loser. As amusing as that was, I was once again filled with dread as V looked at me and said, "Judas Lightforge, huh? That seems like a strange name." My name was spreading too fast. I began to look over the patrons of the tavern while absently speaking with V. I only really noticed when she finished her ale and was ordering another one. I was only 2 drinks into mine, and I won't say I was drunk, but I wasn't feeling the usual aches and pains either. Then my eyes locked in on it, or should I say her. From the back, 2 eyes were reflecting the dim lantern light, like an animal watching from the shadows, a jade and a sapphire fixed on me. I didn't want to look too long, but I had to know what I was dealing with. I could only see her outline, could tell it was a woman. And just a random thought, What is going on today? I'm fairly certain I've never received this much female attention in my entire life. Where was this kind of attention when I was in my 20s? She stood up and started to walk to me. I absent-mindedly took another drink of the Dragon's Blood Ale. V beside me told me to hurry up because I was way behind. I shot her a glance and noticed her chest had grown. I immediately turned away from her and back to the lady approaching me. She was in the light now. An elf. A wood elf, I think. Young, but with elves you can't tell. She could be 20 or 200. Pale skin, dark hair, a tattoo of a fox riding up her arm, and a blue eye and a green eye. Her shirt was open and revealing, and I dared not look. This L was causing my eyes to linger, and she already seemed like she had serious business to attend to. "Is there something I can help you with, Judas?" she said while looking into my eyes, like she was trying to judge me, trying to judge if I was a good person or a bad person. Quickly thinking of an excuse to keep staring at her, I said, "I would like to buy you a drink." With that, V immediately cries out that we're having a drinking competition. Suddenly, I was surrounded by a cast of adventurers, all strangers to this tavern, almost as if we were all part of a story. And the author was so bereft of imagination, he had us all start in a bar. The other patrons moved away and let us have the bar area. I can see why. We were a tabaxi carrying a large bag of armor, a very large orc, a wood elf, a lady covered in daggers, a wizard in dark robes, and myself in a dark coat with a spellbook holstered to my belt. Lilith put out mugs of ale and began filling them with small drops of dragon's blood. V cleared her throat to get everyone's attention. Then she proclaimed that we all put 3 gold into a pot, and whoever wins gets the pot. But then I asked, how do we determine who has won? Lilith said while still pouring that they have a very popular game in that tavern. One of the employees will stand in front of the front wall. After drinking a full mug, you throw a dagger at him. The best hit wins. If you miss, you are out. Of course, me being a little surprised at this idea, I asked, "Are you suggesting that we throw daggers at a living person?" Lilith only smiled and said, "Not exactly." And then she called out for a person named Dialek to move to the front. The suit of armor in the back lit up. Small pockets of green light emanated from under the metal plates. The eyes lit up as the armor started to lurch forward. With each step, it would make a strange whoop whoop sound, while plumes of black smoke flowed from underneath its helmet, or its head. I'm unsure what I was looking at. Finally, it took its place by the front wall and held its arms out. I couldn't tell if it was alive or what it was, but standing up there and having daggers thrown at you seemed like a bad deal, so I called out, "Mate, are you sure about this?" After a moment, the automaton turned its head towards me, leaned down, and said, "It's fine." So then, it was game on. First, Griswold drank his entire stein and turned to Dialek. He then asked, which one of the 3 should he aim at? The alcohol obviously taking its toll. V called out to aim for the middle one. So at this point, I'm aware that I am sitting in a den of sadists. With that, Griswold pulled out his hand axe and threw it, striking the robot in the neck. There was an audible gasp in the tavern. The only noise was that of whoop whoop from Dialek as more smoke poured from his helmet. A gentleman walked up to the robot and pulled out the axe, and then snapped his fingers. I couldn't see it so well, but there were a few sparks, and the metal pulled itself back together. Magix rubbed his chin, commenting on how amazing that form of magic is. Apparently, like me, he hadn't seen anything like that. Next, apparently, was my turn. I drank my mug, feeling the ale burning its way into my stomach. Immediately, my feet felt like they were standing on loose gravel. I stepped to the line and asked for a dagger. Someone put one in my hand. I still don't know who. I couldn't see Dialek well. I kept thinking if only I could see him better, I would have a better chance at making a winning throw. Apparently, without realizing it, I cast dancing lights. 4 orbs surrounded me, illuminating the area, and then they moved from me and surrounded Dialek. "Cheating!" Griswold cried out, but I ignored him. I kept looking at Dialek, attempting to steady myself, and then I felt the alcohol kick in once again. And, strangely, I could have sworn that I saw his breast growing. I blinked and then threw the dagger. As well as Dialek was illuminated, as well as the target was laid out before me, the dagger proceeded to fly through the window, shattering the glass. Lilith laughed and informed me that not only am I out of the competition, I have to buy the next set of rounds. I resigned myself to my fate and paid a few copper and silver pieces for the drinks. As the others took their turns landing their hits in various places, V still continued to drink normally. I understand some can handle their alcohol better than others, but this was starting to seem unnatural. Finally, it was her turn. She stood up and drew a dagger from her belt. Almost nonchalantly, she threw the dagger, and it stuck right between Dialek's eyes. His head slammed back against the wall, and his eyes faded out. This was decidedly the best strike. Dialek might be dead, or deactivated, or whatever automatons were when they ceased to function. But hey, I suppose it's just a matter of time before that happens when you make your money having daggers thrown at you. However, not to worry. The gentleman walked up to him, pulled out the dagger, and moved his hands over casting a spell. The metal mended itself, and his eyes fluttered back to life. V, being the decided victor, collected her gold, but then bought us all around. This time I insisted on just an ordinary ale, and the elf asked for wine. We again glanced at each other. She had not introduced herself to me, but in the bustle of the competition, I overheard her say that her name was Nesta. I was about to talk to her, but I was interrupted by the tavern door opening yet again, and a very attractive woman stepping through. Her dress clung to her curves, and in the dim light teased that if you looked hard enough, you could see through the fabric. She walked to the bar and casually had a seat next to us. I stood up to walk to her, but then felt myself start to fall and I quickly sat back down. I was drunk, but I was sure I recognized those jerky motions. I was sure I was looking at the hag Malevolus. Without giving the other guys time to make a pass at her, I decided to start the conversation. "I know you. I have a voice in my head that says you took something that doesn't belong to you, and she wants it back." The lady smiled, with her blonde hair falling over her face. "I will be happy to return it, if you accept the offer I made you." She started twisting her hair over one finger. Without waiting for an answer, she looked to the others and said that she had an offer for all of us. She stood and began to walk to the back corner table, with no doubt that we would follow her. She swiped her hand, and the men at that table quickly packed up their drinks and moved on. She sat, and we all took seats around her. She said she had something to ask us, and if we could deliver, she will grant what we are each after, be it power, money, love, anything at all. Griswold asked for a friend of his named Annalie. The hag snapped her fingers, and an illusion of a person appeared on the table. I can only assume that this is an image of the person Griswold had asked for. Malevolus informed us that she was held by a cult that sacrificed people, particularly children. This cult was on her bad side and would like them dealt with. These cultists were far more evil than even herself. V cut in saying that it seemed like the hag needed us more than we needed her, to which she retorted that that is why she's offering anything that we want. She waved her fingers at Griswold, and in an instant, he turned into a chicken. She gave an amused laugh while the rest of us were silent, and then again wiggled her fingers, and he changed back into the big strong orc he was. She went on to say that she feeds on happy memories of others, and to enter into this deal, one of us would have to surrender a happy memory to her. All the others began speaking at once, trying to bargain with her, but she knew she had the trump card. None of them were willing to walk away with the promise of receiving something that they so desperately needed. I didn't know what the others needed, but I could only assume it was as much as Seiji wanted to be returned to his human form so he could return home. She crossed her legs and leaned her shoulders back, a posture showing that she was in complete control. I know about these otherworldly beings. Almost any deal made with them had a trick. Some you could sell your soul to and not even know it. The last thing I could let happen is to let this hag into my mind. She would take more than just a memory, I'm sure. The greater the wish, the greater the price. So I had resolved to simply ask for Chelsandra's item to be returned. For a moment, I thought I could just steal it back. Yet, after seeing her effortlessly change the orc into a chicken, I could see her powers were far beyond my own. I had a feeling that display was for the benefit of Magix and myself. If I sit back and let this group promise more and more for their desires, perhaps she will be satiated enough to let me claim the item without much of a cost at all. She held up a hand, silencing all the voices. She stated that the cult exists here in Xertus, as well as surrounding towns, even the capital of Beor, then narrowed her eyes at Seiji. Before him appeared an image of his human self. Again, she blankly asked what we wanted, what we would pay, and if we would hunt this cult. The image changed to human Seiji in his armor, leading a vast army. As I looked around, I could tell the others were seeing what they needed. It didn't seem like my new friends were motivated by greed. They were in trouble, or knew people who needed help. What, me? What would I really ask for? What I need, no hag can give to me, no matter how powerful. My mess was caused by beings like her. If it were up to me, they'd all be wiped off the face of Nephis. Her light tone again filled the air. How about it? The cult of the Obsidian Eye. One happy memory for whatever you want. She again looked at me, kicking a leg up. Before I could say anything, Griswold leapt forward. He said he would offer his favorite memory, the memory of why he became a fighter. The hag smiled and said that pays for the happy memory. Now she would need each of us to bring her a living member of the cult to feed from, and to cripple the cult itself. After that, what we want would be ours. I felt a pang of sadness for the orc. He had no idea what he had just done. But his misfortune is my good luck. It'll make my job much easier. I moved past the others, and then took a very close seat next to the beautiful lady. Enough so that I could whisper in her ear without the others hearing. I noticed that Nesta was watching me very closely. What I was doing was suspicious, I am sure, but it had to be done. Before long, I'll be done with this rabble anyway, and back on to my real mission. I whispered, Malevolus, I know your name. You know who I work for. She wants what is hers returned to her. I do this, and you give what she wants to me. Malevolus touched my chin to move my face forward, and then she moved her lips to my ear, giving a soft kiss to my earlobe before speaking. So you're giving up what you really want for her? I can please you far more than she ever could. But if that's what you want, I will agree. Harbinger. I quickly moved away from her, half because I didn't want to be tainted by her, and the other half because I just wanted to get this deed done. She placed her hands on the table, and a large piece of parchment formed, laying out before us. The writing was in abyssal. The others gasped at the idea of signing a formal contract. I considered them lucky. I was never afforded such a luxury. Suddenly, a flash of a dark demon appeared in my mind, looking through me with red eyes, hissing at me before it faded. A feeling of betrayal flooded me, but strange, a flavor of guilt to it, as if it was indeed I who was the betrayer. One at a time, we pricked our fingers and placed our drop of blood. Now we were all bound, and to this monster, we are the Contractors. That does it for episode 2 of The Contractors, and thank you very much for listening. These stories are very much a thank you to the D&D group who invited me in. I'm very grateful because we've had a lot of really good times, and also the DM who created this crazy world for us to play in. I hope you guys enjoy it. As always, may you thirst for adventure and hell.